Okay, this dry, wet conditions, you may need to pay extra attention on the ground, especially on the steps. Some of these climbing boots, they're not great on the slippery conditions, so please be very, very careful. Okay? And watch yourself as you go in and out of the cells, please. The doors are quite low, so just watch you don't bang your head. And again, just to repeat what I said down below, don't climb over that wall at the back or on any structures, please stay on the path. But basically where you're standing and sitting is this in the middle of this little monastic village. All these structures were built by the monks. Most of it's made out of dry stone. We believe the monastery was occupied for about 900 years altogether, for about 500 years all year round. From sometime in the middle of the 6th century right until the 12th century, they lived here on the island all year round. And then from the 12th century up until the Cromwellian times, they lived on the mainland, but they came out here in the summertime. So you can imagine how difficult it would have been living here in the 8th, 9th century when they had everything built. The first fella that came out here, there was nothing. There was no steps, there was nowhere to live, there was no gardens to grow his food. But we do believe there was some pre-Christian use of the island. We have a little bit of evidence of use up at this level here from a fire that dated to pre-Christian times. So this may have been a very sacred site going back thousands of years. You can imagine it is a very beautiful place. People would have been passing in their boats and been curious. And high places around Ireland were considered holy ground, so a lot of our mountains were considered places where the gods hung out, you know. So this is no exception. So you climbed up about 600 steps of the south staircase to the valley down below. There we think there are 2 caves where they settled at the very beginning. They would have grown some rudimentary crops down there, maybe had a few sheep at the very beginning, eating the puffins. Puffins very good to eat, so they would have been eating the birds and the sea life around the island. But then they realised this is the most sheltered, and on cue the sun comes out and we're all going to dry up and it's going to be really nice and we can all have fun.
You arranged that very well.
Yeah, there's another cloud coming there, so we may have to scoot. But this is the most sheltered, and it's one of the warmest places in the country as well. It does heat up very well here. The stones will dry off very quickly because they did absorb a lot of heat during the morning. And most of our winter weather comes from the west here, and this cliff pushes a lot of the wind up and over this way. We were here last year on the hurricane, the tail of the end of that hurricane in September. We had 10 days that we could not get off the island with no tourists. We were stuck here, and you could not get up parts of the steps. You would have been blown off. But once you got up in here, the wind was rushing over this area and it was very calm and relaxed in here. But as soon as you went out through the garden terrace there, you were clinging onto the stones. So that's why they built up at this level here. We're at about 600 feet of altitude here, about 190 meters or so. And to build at this level took a lot of ingenuity and a lot of hard work. The cliff runs underneath us here at a very steep angle, and this large wall then was built off the side of the cliff, and they filled in the ground behind us. So this is all man-made ground, and then they could build their structures on top. So there are many, many thousands of tons of rock had to be broken by hand by the monks with simple tools, hammer and crowbar, brought into this area to build up the ground before they could build their structures. And we believe the back of the monastery here may be many meters higher. They quarried the top off the island almost to provide the stone here. And they would have known the island very well, where they could get slabs of quartz, like this white quartz. They would have quarried this and laid it in front of their chapel here. They would have known where to get a nice slab of stone for a lintel or a cross and things like that. So they would have known the island extensively, and they built in many areas around the island evidence of their structures, stone steps, little buildings for storage of food, maybe animals and things like that. So they did a lot of work. The oldest structure we have is this rectangular piece. Those of you who haven't walked around yet, you may see this place where the high cross was placed at a later date. Underneath the white quartz stones there, we believe the relics or the bones of the body of the first monk was laid as a sign of respect. And this would have been a standalone structure. They would have gathered around to say their prayers. Eventually they extended their terrace this way, and they built the chapel. This is the main monk's church here. And then behind it then is the graveyard, okay? If you want to go inside a cell, work away. You can all go inside if you want, but I'll keep going until it lashes down. So this is the holy inner sanctum of the monastery. The garden is the first terrace you walked in through. They would have grown vegetables out there. The stone staircase that you climbed up would have joined up outside the wall with the eastern steps, which goes down to the pier, and that winds in through the door, in through the wall there. Gee, let's take shelter. Here, run away.